as long as I can remember, I have been in the Dead Rising fandom. Unlike many other people in the fandom, I've always preferred the sequel, Dead Rising 2. However, my favorite game of the series is not what you'd expect. Dead Rising 2 Case West was announced on September 15, 2010, and released December 27, 2010. It takes place almost directly after ending A from the base game, not overtime, though it definitely has confused a majority of people, including the wiki. It was marketed as a standalone epilogue DLC, like its parallel brother Case Zero. This game marks Frank West's return as a protagonist in the Dead Rising series, as fans noted the lack of Frank and replacement with Chuck Green. Off the record, a what-if scenario was released months after Case West, and borrowed many things from Case West, including Frank's design, the weapons and combo weapons, etc. However, unlike these other titles, Case West is seemingly less talked about than the other games, despite its canon state. The game's canonicity is stated in Dead Rising 3, and yes, this whole lead-in is my way of saying, my favorite game is Case West. Now, you'll probably look at me confused, but this game never gets old. Sure, it only takes about 2 hours to complete, but it has its own charm to it. It's kinda funny, too.
Nice investigative work, Frank. Just drop it, Chuck. Get your ass out of my face. Back up.
Hey, buddy. Listen, you just keep quiet, all right? We don't want to hurt.
Yeah, we had a slight alarm malfunction up here.
I myself have already uploaded the unreleased soundtrack to this game, and after discovering the debug build of this game, and using many tools given to me by the community, I think it's time to take a deep dive of this game's files. A fellow funny Servbot man did his own video of the unused content in the base Dead Rising 2, and now I think it's time I do one on the most underrated game of the franchise. In the game's files, there are many loading screens that have unused or different versions of areas, or even beta Frank. Here are all the unused loading screens with my notes on them. Those were all the loading screen images that are unused or different from the ones in the final game. You may have noticed that Frank looks a little bit different. That is because it's his beta design from way before the game came out, before they finalized his more aged and a lot more fine chin look. In this build there are several leftovers of this design, such as this very low quality tutorial image. Hell, you can even view this design for yourself via the combo cards, which all still use this beta design. Also, speaking of combo cards, almost every single combo card from base Dead Rising 2 is in the game's files. Even the placeholder combo card from the base game that was also unused is in the game's files. And here's the fun part. I found an unused combo weapon in the game's files. Well, just the combo card. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Cold Snap. It's a water gun combined with liquid nitrogen. And no, this is not a replacement of the snowball cannon, which is also in the game's files. From the looks of it, it might have been a parallel to the flamethrower. Instead of shooting fire, it sprays liquid nitrogen, kinda like a fire extinguisher. Mixed with the combo cards, I also found something kinda interesting. It seems like an early idea that they had was to put the skill moves on cards, sorta like the combo cards. The cards for curb stomp, double lariat, football tackle, foot sweep, and punt kick are the ones left over, though they notably use Frank's final design instead of his beta one, suggesting that might have been a late cut. Okay, now here's something really interesting. If Frank gets attacked while using his camera, it'll get stuck in his hands and you can swap it with him to use it. However, it doesn't really function the same. As you've noticed, it has infinite ammo, which is extremely strange. However, what's stranger is it can be used as a sort of weapon. Although it shoots bullet holes, it doesn't do any damage to NPCs or zombies. However, it can do damage to props, such as acetylene tanks. Although if you use it on an NPC or a zombie, it gives like a pushback effect. For zombies, it just kinda makes them stumble a little bit, but for NPCs, it acts like a soft punch, but it doesn't do any damage. It also makes these noises. Kinda sounds like a handgun. Also, it has a name, by the way. Yup. Now that's basically it on the camera weapon. Before we move on, here are some smaller mentions. There's a ladder icon found in the map graphics, and some leftover Case 0 case file images. There's an unused icon for the impact hammer that looks a little bit different than its in-game design, having markings on it. There's also an unused leftover audio file. It is known as Gyroscope Attract Source Music, and it's a leftover from Dead Rising 2, though I have no idea where it could be played. It's heavily filtered, but I'll play a little bit of it here. It's kinda similar to the Overtime boss theme. Now for some unused text. There's some unused text that is a beta version of the cutscene before the cold opening. It's not too different from the final version, but I'll show it right here. It's almost identical to the final version of the game, albeit with some different lines. There's a couple of dialogue exchanges left in the game's files. There's an exchange between Frank and presumably Chuck saying that they're not off to a good start, as well as them mentioning Freedom transshipping zombies from Fortune City. There's dialogue referencing an intruder in a security outpost, possibly meant to be used in the case access codes. There's a couple small line changes, like in the cutscene for Blackout, when Frank says, "Now's our chance, the guards just took off or something." That's almost it for all the unused text in the game's files that I could find. Here are some small unused audio. There are 2 voice clips for Frank that go unused in Case West. These voice clips are used when rolling off of a bike. However, there are no bikes in Case West, meaning this line goes unused. These lines were later reused and off the record. Now there's one last small thing. Although it's unseen, there's an image for Case 3-3. I say unseen because the game ends before you can see the case file image. Here's the case file image in all of its low quality glory. And now, we segue to the best part of this video. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the builds working on my computer. And that's why I enlisted the help of a man I will only refer to as Ben, who went out of his way to record gameplay from these builds. Starting with the first and most underwhelming build. The July 7th prototype, while looking really interesting, is just a menu. Yup, it ain't even playable, it's just a menu. It also reuses Case Zero's assets. The only worthwhile thing talking about in this build is the title screen. It makes me kinda curious what game this was gonna be before. And now, the debug build. Off the bat, the first thing you notice is in the starting screen, Chuck is holding a chainsaw, rather than a shotgun in the final game. Now, if you've seen Stippo's video on the Dead Rising 2 debug menu, or have been in the modding scene at all, you'll know that this is the High Roller's debug menu. By using debug enter, you can jump to any point in the game, any case or cutscene, even boss fight. By pressing the select button, you can bring up the debug menu. Now, there are millions of options in the debug menu, so I cannot go through all of them, but here are some of the options that I found were really interesting and I really liked. There's an option where you can toggle text that tells you what animation your player is currently doing. And now for a debugging classic, free camera, which can make you move the camera wherever you want it to go, including areas you were not supposed to be. It gives a really good look at how well Case West was designed and modeled. How beautiful the maps look, even in areas you're not supposed to see. There's a lot of wacky fun camera options that I won't really get into in this video for time's sake. Okay, now take a look at this. You can play as Frank in single player. And it works perfectly fine. Absolute fail, Blue Castle Games. Shame on you! Okay, I'm obviously joking, but like, it's almost fully functional in this debug menu. The only bug that I've noticed stemmed from it is Chuck and Frank swap their places in cutscenes, which is honestly really hilarious to see Chuck and Frank just in opposite positions, but like, yeah, it kinda makes sense why it was scrapped. It would have been kinda hard to implement that. Chuck and Frank themselves are pretty much outfits, which is why they're swapping in cutscenes. Also, Chuck's weapon of choice seems to be a handgun, akin to Frank's baseball bat, which yes, he can also regenerate infinitely. The Auto Chuck feature returns from the Dead Rising 2 debug menu, though I won't go into detail about it because Stippo already covered it in his Dead Rising 2 debug menu video, and it's pretty much exactly the same. Chuck, or in this case Frank, do automated tasks based on the type of bot that you chose. For example, zombie killing or mission hunting or whatever. There's also a way to uncap the frame rate to make it look smooth. This section of the video will be about the different levels in the game's files that can be selected in the debug menu. There's a lot to get through, so I'll start with the familiar one. X Audio Zoo was a level featured in the base Dead Rising 2. However, in this game, it's noticeably really dark and kind of scary for some reason. There's weird untextured chucks sitting around the map. It's mainly just a bunch of dark rooms and tunnels. Nothing too interesting. On to the next map. First thing to note is that the map spawns weapons around you. This is a huge demonstration on the fact that Case West has all of Dead Rising 2's base weapons in the game's files, fully functional. There's also a random funny PP sticker here for some random reason. There's also more untextured chucks, this time in a blue color for some weird reason. This is also the perfect time to point out that the laser gun's beta name is the Power Blaster. Now, there's not a lot to this map besides beta gambling and weird blue chucks. So yeah, let's just move on. Okay, this is the part where I do a lot of skips. There's a ton of these levels that have the name Auto Chuck in them, and they all just spawn you with the Auto Chuck state doing certain tasks. They're all pretty much repeats of each other, and it would take too much time to just go through all these, so I will skip all of them, because there's not a lot really here notable. Okay, now time to move on to some actually interesting stuff. This no-name map spawns you in the Harjasing boss fight, nothing out of the ordinary, except for the fact that he has seemingly less health. Oh, and you can still roam around after he dies, it just kinda moves on and he doesn't really trigger a cutscene. By the way, the exterior you see in this cutscene is actually just a 2D image. As the name would suggest, this debug map is supposed to test survivors. It spawns just about every single survivor you see in the main story. Let's just move on and pretend you didn't see that. This map spawns you in the area where the cutscene in the beginning plays, where you overlook the Phenotrans facility on that hill. Without using free cam to teleport, you basically fall infinitely. Interesting to know how the background is mainly composed of 2D images, layered to give the illusion of a background. The hill they stand on is pretty much the only thing in this map that has collision, and the only place in the map you can stand on, to avoid falling. Though the area below the hill has some collision. The next map is the exact same thing, however, it's the title screen, as you can hear the title screen music playing in the background. The vent that Chuck and Frank scout out in the beginning is also a 3D model in this. Feels like I'm on an episode of Boundary Break. This next map is currently my personal favorite. As the name would suggest, it spawns you on the Fortune City Hotel rooftop, as seen in the beginning of the game. Now, if you're an eagle-eyed fan, you'd notice that this map looks a lot different from the one in base Dead Rising 2, not just the lighting. In this map, you can't see the Fortune City Hotel like you can in the base game. There you can see the Royal Flush Plaza. Pretty much everything on this map is almost the same from in base game though. Just small differences like lighting and removing certain buildings. You can also find this LOD Royal Flush Plaza in the distance. For some reason, when you load this map, it just completely starts in a black screen. If you force the title screen, you'll see that you're kinda out of bounds, and you can see the facility in the background. If you go to the facility area, however, you might notice that this isn't just a regular facility at all. Does it look familiar? That's because this facility is the map that plays during the bad ending, which it's only seen there. However, it seems that the side that the camera isn't pointing at is not modeled at all. That also means that there isn't a lot to this map, besides the area that you can see in the cutscene. So I'm just gonna move on. Speedrun time. This map spawns you in the holding pens right after you escape from the storage container, and there's a security guard waiting outside right for you, who also has like one thing of health. I have no idea why Chuck is really fast though. This map spawns you in the battle against the hazard units. Nothing special. This map spawns you in the Oh. I was gonna say this map spawns you in the battle with the security guards in the beginning of the game, however, they are not in this map. Their music is still playing though. Okay, now here's where things get interesting. This is the secure lab map. However, there's a ton of zombies in the battle area where you fight Harjit Singh. There's never usually zombies in this area, so I wonder if this had to do with the final boss, or if you were able to go in this area originally. The name of this map is called Frank Weapons, so it might have been a way to test Frank's use of weapons in the game and how they break. This map spawns you in an eerily empty harvesting room for some reason. Nothing really going on with this map, so I'll just skip it. This map spawns you in the secure lab, which is also empty. Skipping this one as well. This map spawns you in the holding pens, and there's a couple of security guards spread around the map. Might have been to just test the AI of the security guards, or just test killing them in general. This map, as predicted, spawns you in the commander boss fight. Yep.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get.
You You can also see his full unused death animation. This map spawns you in, oh wow, you guessed it, the secure lab. Okay, whew, that's all of the levels in this debug build. I'm finally done.
And now for something completely different.
And now I dedicate this portion to the video about NPCs. You know them, you love them. Here are most of the NPCs that are found in the game. You can spawn an extremely generic contestant with a weird cube model for some reason. And also, what? For those who don't know, Bobby Newland was a unused TIR contestant who was apparently a sanitation worker and a survivor of the Las Vegas outbreak. He did not make it into the final game of Dead Rising 2, and it's really unclear why he's in Case West debug. You can spawn a couple generic contestants with the same cube model for some reason as well. I had to switch maps because the game decides to randomly stop working and not spawn NPCs if you're on a certain map. You can spawn Isabella Keys, but since she's in the safe house, it marks her as saved for some reason. Maybe you were planning to save her in the base game? I don't know. Maybe this is just a glitch because it's a safe house technically, by coding. You can pretty much spawn every survivor in the shipping office and it will mark them as saved. You can also spawn an NPC that uses Frank's model and has the name Chuck over it. It also seemingly reuses all of Chuck's noises. Now the main thing this might be is the AI Chuck when you swap to Frank in single player. You can spawn the remains of a looter, apparently, according to the name, as well as a blatantly named zombie test. And also this broken commander with his arm for some reason bugging out, and his legs clipping through the floor. Yeah, that's pretty much it on the NPCs. Here's a little bit of messing around with the weapons menu, where you can spawn almost every weapon in the game's files, even ones from base Dead Rising 2. I'm sorry, I just had to. Anyways, that's pretty much it for weapons. There isn't really too much in terms of that. This is just screwing around, so moving on to something different. It's honestly an art in itself to explore free camera and cutscenes to see different angles and see the kind of camera tricks that the developers used and just kind of break down the scene, see the funny cutting and clipping of characters, all that stuff. It gives you a little bit of a behind the scenes look on how these cutscenes are made and stuff that you usually don't notice in these cutscenes, which you can see a lot clearer in these more behind the scenes looks.
You look like you could use a little Zombrex every day yourself, lady. Why would you do this?
You can't think I need Zombrex anymore. I made something to remedy that years ago, with Isabella's very helpful notes.
A cure? You've had a cure all this time?
Of course. It wouldn't have been in our interests to release it. You reap what you sow.
Attention all personnel. Self-destruct.
We've got to find it. The cure, it's got to be in here somewhere.
We've got to get out of here, Chuck.
No, we can't leave. I need to find that cure for my daughter.
It's too late!
Never did like that damn show.
You look familiar. Hey, you must be...
Hey, you're the one who's all over the TV. You know, they're vigilantes out for your head. You're commanding a nice bounty.
Is that why you came? Huh?
Well, maybe I don't exactly believe everything I see on TV.
Phenotrans are the ones who killed thousands in Fortune City, thousands in Vegas. They're the ones who killed my wife. And they're the ones who killed Rebecca.
Rebecca? Rebecca Chang? She's dead?
I'm sorry. A Phenotrans agent shot her. Look, I need proof, damn it. I've got to clear my name.
You don't have time for that. They're gonna blow this place to hell any second.
Then I'm screwed.
Look, I got an idea. I have a source that's told me about some sort of Phenotrans facility, west of here.
What kind of facility?
I don't know. I was gonna find out with Rebecca. You might be able to find your evidence there. Might be a connection to what happened here. You can come, but if I find out you had something to do with this...
Look, buddy, I didn't do it, all right? What are you looking for, a big story? Some way to get yourself back in the limelight?
Oh yeah? Is that what you think? There's a hell of a lot more to it than that. And the name's Frank. Frank West.
And with that, this video comes to an end. That was all of the content I found via data mining and via the help of my friend who decided to go out of his way and record debug footage from the debug build. That is all of the things that I have found that are noteworthy, and I feel that after this video, Case West will have been given justice, and I just want to thank the fans and the community of Dead Rising for their help in aiding me and giving me the tools that I needed to dissect, and just overall helping me throughout this entire video, and this video wouldn't have been possible without them. Only time will tell if I decide to do a Case Zero unused content video, because there is a debug build for that game, and I'm sure there is a couple of neat things in the files. Or maybe, better yet, a sequel to the Dead Rising 2 video that Jake Jakers did, as I doubt that's all of the unused content in the game's files. Since we're talking about it now, here's a couple of loading screens that I found that are unused from that game. Also, Off the Record, too. Off the Record has its own unused content as well. I posted the beta version of His Name's Frank on YouTube, and there's a couple of loading screens, too, I'll show here, just because why not? And with that, this video finally comes to an end. Thank you for watching, and be sure to play Dead Rising 2 Case West if you still have it in your 360 library. It's still in the Microsoft Store, by the way, too, so if you have an Xbox, just enjoy it.
Yeah!